So we finally got some news on Worlds Beyond a couple of days ago, and by this point everyone and their mother has already made their videos on the subject, so I'm a little bit late to the party, but today it's my turn to give my thoughts on the news. There's quite a bit of stuff to go through, so this might end up being a long one, so I've left timestamps in the description if you're only interested in specific sections of the news. Before we get started though, a couple of disclaimers. First, this isn't a new summary video, there's already plenty of those out there, including an official page from Cygames which I will link in the description, so if you want a summary, just go look at those. This video is explicitly for me to just yap my face off about what I think about the news, like a good attention-hungry content creator who wants to think his opinions actually matter. Second, I'm generally quite indifferent to a lot of things, so don't expect the hottest takes or any aggressive opinions or anything, so with that out of the way, let's get into the news. First things first, we finally got an actual release date, which is the 17th of June this year, a little later than I expected, but it lines up with my summer break and gives me more time to prepare, so I guess it actually works out for me. If you're coming in fresh and haven't played Shadowverse before, this will also give you time to get used to how the game works before Worlds Beyond releases as well. Also, pre-registration is already available on the Apple App Store, Google Play Store, Steam, and Epic Games Store, so make sure you do that if you haven't already. As usual for pre-registration events, there is milestone rewards that will be given to players depending on how many people register, so do that if you're interested in the game. I'll put the link for it in the description. So let's get into the news here. They've announced quite a few mechanical changes as well as new mechanics, so let's talk about those. First, new keywords. These new keywords are just for effects that have already existed in the game for quite a while, so nothing crazy here, just a nice addition for clarity's sake. Next, the addition of Crests, which gives an official name to leader effects, which we're already familiar with, but it also comes with some slight mechanical changes as well. So first, there's now a place on the board where these crests sit, so it's much easier to keep track of them. And then secondly, there's 5 slots, so you can only have 5 unique crests at a time. We don't quite know what happens if you try to add a 6th one yet, so that remains to be seen, I guess. One theory I've heard suggests that since there's an actual place for them on the board now, we might eventually get effects that can interact with them or maybe even destroy them, though that remains to be seen as well. Overall, nice change for clarity since leader effects have always been notoriously easy to forget in-game. Now for some more impactful changes. Opening hand has been changed to 4 cards, so your decks will become more consistent and skill expression via mulligan will probably increase, with more options and flexibility provided from having a 4th card to start with. They've also gotten rid of the extra draw the player going second used to get on their first turn, and this does look like it'll tip the balance more heavily in the favor of the player going first, but we'll go into more detail about this later. The last mechanical change we'll cover here is the changes to how evolving, the divining mechanic of Shadowverse, is going to work. First, evolve stats are now fixed at +2/+2. Thus make things like calculating lethals or clearing boards easier, but I do think it's a bit of a shame since I liked how the option of having abnormal stats allowed for more space for card design, especially with followers like Holy Saber that get abnormal evil stats in exchange for only evolving through specific conditions. Super Evolve, which we'll get into more details about later as well, will also give +3/+3 in fixed stats. Finally, both players will get 2 evil points and 2 super evil points per game regardless of who goes first or second. So with these changes in place, the player going second has lost almost every concession they had to balance the inherent advantage of going first. So here are the advantages that the player going second will get in Worlds Beyond. First, they get access to both Evolving and Super Evolving first. Evolving will be unlocked on the 4th turn of the player going second as usual, and Super Evolving will be unlocked on the 6th turn of the player going second as well. Presumably this will give the player going second the opportunity to swing the board state in their favor using these mechanics. And there will be one more advantage that the player going second will get in the form of a new mechanic. So twice per game, once from turns 1 to 5 and one more time from turn 6 onwards, the player going second will be able to press a button at any time during their turn that gives them an extra play point to work with this turn. It works similarly to the coin from Hearthstone if you're familiar with that game, in that it can allow you to temporarily exceed your max play points for the turn. From what I can tell though, it doesn't seem to increase your max PP itself, so for example, you could use this extra play point to play Dragon Oracle on turn 1, but you wouldn't be able to use this on 6 max play points to activate Overflow. I can't speak to how this will affect the balance of going first versus second, but I do really like this mechanic. I think there will be a lot of room for skill expression in when and where you use these play points, and increases the range of cards that the player going first has to play around. Funnily enough, this might be the only mechanic that gives you some control over enhance and accelerate, since you can choose the exact moment your play point increases during your turn. And it also remains to be seen whether this will let you reach 11 play points and what horrors that might allow you to unleash. Now we finally get to the main dish of the whole news drop, Super Evolve, and there's a lot to talk about here. First, let's look at how it works. On the 6th turn of the player going second, the ability to Super Evolve is unlocked. Any follower can Super Evolve, and when a follower is Super Evolved, it gains +3/+3 and Rush, just like how regular Evolve works, in addition to more effects on top of that. So a Super Evolved follower can't take damage or be destroyed by effects during your turn, and when it attacks and destroys an enemy follower, it quite literally just throws the enemy follower into your opponent's face, dealing 1 damage to their leader. And finally, Super Evolving a follower will activate both their Evolve and Super Evolve effects if they have any. They haven't explicitly stated it, but you'll most likely not be allowed to evolve and super evolve on the same turn, and you probably can't super evolve a follower that's already evolved either, though that's just speculation on my part. Overall, this looks like it'll be more impactful than Evolve was in the first game, since it allows your super evolved follower to trade into enemy followers without taking any damage. It basically forces your opponent to have a proper answer to your super evolved follower, and will probably provide the player going second a bigger board swing than the first regular evo turn. The extra face damage also means that being at low defense is more risky in general, since every deck has more access to face damage via these tiny pings. Personally, I also think that by adding another mechanic that only activates later in the game, it'll allow them to slow the game down by locking super impactful effects behind Super Evolve, though that will largely depend on how they handle these mechanics going forward. I also like that they seem to be moving in the direction of designing Evolve as a mechanic that you use liberally throughout the mid to late game instead of thinking about having to save evo points. I'm sure there are a lot of people who like the resource management aspect of budgeting evo points, but personally I feel like as the game's defining feature, I want to be able to use it as much as possible. This is definitely going to be a huge addition to the game and really screams the sequel. Now that we've got the major updates to gameplay mechanics out of the way, let's talk about another category of news near and dear to the hearts of all card game players: the changes to how collecting cards will work. Starting from Worlds Beyond, you will no longer be allowed to dismantle cards until you have collected 3 copies in total between unanimated and animated versions of the same card. They haven't stated how promos and alternate art cards will factor into this, but I suspect they will count towards the total as well. This was probably the most controversial change announced in the stream, and for a good reason. It really does seem like a move to artificially increase the difficulty of collecting cards and building the decks you want, especially for casual players and players who want to one-trick a specific class. It's especially bad considering their track record of adding a bunch of Take-Two pack filler cards into every expansion that will realistically never see play in constructed game modes. Doesn't affect me that much personally, since I make it a point to keep a playset of every card anyway, but I definitely understand why some people might be upset. Well, I don't really like this change either. It's hard for me to comment on this one too much, since I don't really know what went on behind the scenes that motivated it. It's not all bad news though, as they are adding some new features that will make it easier to collect cards as well. In Worlds Beyond, you'll be able to open a card pack for free every day, similar to Pokemon TCG Pocket if you play that. This will definitely help a lot with building your collection, since you can get cards just by logging in regardless of how much you're actually playing the game. Also, it doesn't state this explicitly in the English translation for some reason, but you'll be able to get 10 packs by completing missions with the release of every new expansion. We don't quite know yet if this is an addition to or replacing the usual 10 packs we used to get with the release of every new expansion, but anyway, this will help you get started with a new expansion by giving you some cards to work with. The biggest change in my opinion though is that excluding your free daily packs, you're guaranteed a legendary every 10 packs. This pity system is huge, as it will make it much easier to pick up legendary cards and prevent really bad rolls where you open tons of packs without picking up a single legendary. It basically guarantees you'll be able to play with at least some of the flashy new stuff every expansion. This is also a very welcome change to me as a content creator, since making videos requires me to craft tons of decks, and having guaranteed legendaries will help reduce the val costs, and I'll probably be able to use most of them anyway. There's 2 more smaller pieces of news regarding building a collection. So first, completing first fairy missions will allow you to claim a pre-built deck for whichever class you want to help kickstart your journey to building your first competent deck, I suppose. Secondly, you'll be able to get free stuff by completing missions in Worlds Beyond as well. The Japanese version gives more information on this than the English version. For some reason, it says something to the effect of complete missions and quests like play a match at a battle table in the Shadowverse Park to obtain card packs and other items. And the Shadowverse Park is basically just the metaverse-like system that they're gonna implement in Worlds Beyond. Lastly, let's look at the expansion roadmap they provided in the stream as well. It looks like they intend to release cards on a 2-month expansion cycle in Worlds Beyond, which I'm pretty happy about. I usually run out of videos ideas anyway towards the tail end of each expansion, so shortening the expansion cycle should hopefully reduce my downtime in making videos. Also help probably reduce the time spent playing around in a more or less fixed meta too, so that's pretty nice. We can see here that they'll be releasing the first 2 expansions on an accelerated schedule, most likely to draw in new players in the first few months of the game, as well as build out a pool of cards to play with more quickly so you don't run out of things to try in the first few expansions. Again, the English translation is quite different from the Japanese version here for some reason, but the first expansion will be released after a month featuring Phylene, if we're going off the silhouette they've provided here. And the second expansion will be released after a month and a half, featuring the Omens, if this silhouette of Mirabane is anything to go by. The Omens are very popular, as well as being some of the few completely original characters that they've introduced in Shadowverse, so I'm definitely excited to see what they'll do with them this time. Overall, I'd say I'm pretty happy with the stuff they've announced regarding the card game itself. Obviously, it's not all perfect, but for the most part, I'm feeling excited to play Worlds Beyond when it comes out, so I'd say it's pretty good. I'm sure there are people out there who are hoping for more information in general though. Anyway, that's about it for the main part of today's video. They did, however, also announce a bunch of other stuff that's not as related to the main PvP card game aspect as well, but since this video is already way too long, I'll go through the rest of the news in rapid fire style. The metaverse has been reworked into Shadowverse Park, which is more of a virtual card shop style community space without the random minigames and features. I didn't really care for the extra stuff anyway, so I'm fine with that. More work is being put into visual effects with cut-in animations and board-wide visual effects being added to some cards. Looks cool. I always love flashiness in my card games, but hopefully this doesn't murder the device you're playing the game on. New cast of leaders for the story, designs are pretty solid overall. Sword leader looks good aside from that weird shoulder spike thing, so the sword main is happy. Abyss leader doesn't have a voice actor, which makes me concerned about its presence in the story. The rune dragon and haven leader designs seem to be taking the class aesthetics in a more unique direction, which I think is pretty cool. New mascot navigation character, she'll also come with an AI backseating feature in practice matches to help new players learn the game. Pretty cool, though not particularly useful for experienced players unless you want to experience what being a card game streamer is like. Early playtest event in Japan later this month. Cool if you live there or have the means to travel, but I'm in school so it has nothing to do with me. Q&A with the usual faces including KMR that will be live streamed. Feel free to submit your questions if you have any, I'll link it in the description below. World Grand Prix is back this year with a massive 100 million yen grand prize. Massive news for competitive players, but not my cup of tea. Shadowverse Evolved tie-in products will be released as well, and you can get in-game rewards from buying the physical products. Guess I have to break out the wallet again. New legendary cards revealed, no idea how strong they are, but the power level is a bit higher than I expected for a release set. The new card borders look cleaner and the bronze cards actually look like bronze cards now instead of piles of dirt. Bellringer Angel has an actual name now, possibly the biggest news so far, and the greatest insult to Shadowverse players everywhere, she is now a bronze card. How dare they? Anyway, that's about it for my thoughts on the stuff they've announced. Ended up being a way longer video than I expected since there was so much news, but hopefully you enjoyed the video. I rarely find chances to do these kinds of videos, but I do enjoy the occasional yap fast in between my usual gameplay stuff. And I actually had to write a script for this one and it ended up being a little over 5 pages long. I do generally have fun making these though, so I might do more of these kinds of variety style videos near and after Worlds Beyond releases, if I come up with any ideas. Anyway, that's it for today. See you next time. Bye bye.